Welcome back to FTD Podcast. I got an episode today on some random stats and progressions and prospects I think you guys will find fun. I just wanted to go over a couple random things before we start to get into our trade deadline stuff in the next few episodes and the next few months in FTD. Some wild stuff happening this year in the standings, which is kind of cool. So today I thought I'd just focus on some fun tidbits. I think what I saw first here is Gastone Re has passed Serratos in the last few weeks in the OSA top 100. Serratos is a really young athletic hitter. He's only 18, just about to be 19. He's played one full season in the minors. As you can see, he killed it in the very low levels, and then he got promoted up to short season A and survived. He still had positive WAR. I think this year we expect a little bit more. He is such a talent. He's on that kind of fast timeline, so he'll probably be up in A ball there by the end of the year. And high A and double A probably next year is age 20 season kind of thing. So he's on the fast track. He's obviously good enough to do that. But yeah, so he lost a little bit, just a little bit of ratings there on the potentials. He went from 55 to 50i and 80 to 75, which happens all the time when there's that much discrepancy between the current and the potentials. Still sky high, still an absolute superstar, but it's just enough for Gastone Re to bump by him in the OSA rankings. Gastone Re in the OSA is at an 80 contact, 75. He's the main difference is he has that eye that Serratos doesn't quite have. But 65 now, where Serratos says it's like a 55. And so that's the main difference. And they're both about the same defender. Serratos is like a 55 range, 65 arm third baseman. Gastone Re is the 55, probably more of a second baseman. The little bit weaker arm, but neither of them are going to be plus defenders at those spots unless they move to first base. But both of these, this guy can actually play really good left field too, Gaston. But both of these guys are just super elite. But it was just enough of a difference in that little boost, a big report that Gastone Re got, where he jumped up a little bit. I think the main difference just in the eye, just a little bit of difference in the athleticism. That was kind of the big difference in those two. You get the big, really low athleticism here for Serratos. He has the 20 base running and the 35 stealing rating, where Gastone Re is a little bit higher. So just those minor differences in the eye and the athleticism, I think, was enough to push Re to the number one spot. So I know I don't put a lot of stock in the OSA rankings myself, but it's still fun to look at, and they're decently accurate. Like, my legitimate top prospect isn't even in the top 40 of my OSA rankings, which is kind of silly, I think. So talking about him, yeah, he's way down here. Pretty much down at number 49. So I was going to show you this guy next. Esquivel has one of the best defensive seasons I've ever seen. I just thought that was really cool. I was thinking about promoting him pretty soon here. I just don't like to rush catchers, kind of like in dog years, but the opposite. It's like 23-year-old catchers equivalent to like a 17-year-old pitcher. They just take forever to develop. So he's at 60 current out of a 70. It was at 50, I think, when the year started, or 55. So I've just kind of been slow playing him, but probably could have him up in the majors. He just seems to be absolutely destroying AAA. He's had a really good career here, almost 2 WAR, hit 230 in high A there. And then 267, had a bunch of power last year to up his WAR there and his OPS quite a bit. And then this year he's just hitting the snot out of the ball there. 331 is just ridiculous. Not showing a ton of power, but really good eye the last couple seasons too. So he's just really developed like crazy. The coolest thing about him is he entered the league in 2026, and he was so low rated. If you look back at his 2026 ratings, back you had like 20 power, 20 contact, 20 eye, one of the worst players in the game with such low potentials that no one signed him for years. And then my I guess the old GM for the Baltimore, might have even been the computer, finally signed him almost 4 years later, sitting in free agency. So that's kind of one of those things to take a peek at some of those really low rated free agents. Sometimes if you see one part about their game you like, just in the small chance they have a huge progression, like someone like this, where he probably always had pretty good defense. It was mainly the bat that got a lot better. But as you can see, he still isn't crazy with the bat. It's just the eye got quite a bit better, and the ability is just so crazy that, in my opinion, he's like a 10-year starting catcher in the major leagues with probably like an average catcher bat. If out of the 32 catchers in the league, probably be somewhere between 15 and 22 with the bat, maybe tad lower even, but probably have like one of the best defenses with those ratings. So kind of, to me, that smells like a top 20 catcher for sure. So that's just why I think the 49 is a little crazy. But the OSA just doesn't rank defense at all. They just go purely on offense. So that's why you see guys at the top that have like, they'll have guys listed as shortstop that have like 30 range, and they'll be like a top 100 prospect because they have like a 60 bat. So it just doesn't do a good enough job putting defense into the ratings. That's why I don't really like it. But yeah, so I just thought it was a really cool season. I thought I'd show you 37 games so far at catcher as a 22-year-old. He just turned 23, I guess, yesterday. 0 errors, positive zone range, and if you look at the catcher defense I got here, he's got 2 double plays this season. He's got 63% of base runners thrown out, so 17 out of 27 runners thrown out to attempts. Only let up 5 pass balls, which is the only part that's not ridiculously good. That's kind of average out of 37 games, but still pretty decent. The catcher ERA is only 3.69, so just a ridiculous defensive season out of him as a young catcher. It's just the 0 errors and the crazy throwing out base runners. Only a 45 arm just kind of caught my eye. So I absolutely love this prospect. I thought it'd be really cool to see how he develops and if he can develop into that full 70 defender, and maybe the bat just keeps getting better. Just seems to keep going up over the years. Started at 20-35, already gone past those 35 potentials. Same with the power. It started at 30 potential. It's already up to 35. And the eye has just gone crazy. 20-40 has turned into a 50-55. So it's really cool to see those big progressions out of guys like that. The other guy I wanted to show you is having a crazy bounce back season is the shortstop on Washington Nationals here. Chris Marko was one of my top shortstop prospects in the league. The league is really devoid of shortstop talent, of legitimate shortstops like 65, 70 range plus type athletes that have decent bats. There's very few of them in the league. Almost, if you look at every starting shortstop in the entire league, I think there's only less than 5 that are under the age of 27. It's crazy saturated by the veterans. So guy like Marko might be the best shortstop in the league in like 5 years. I don't think he'll ever be that elite with a bat to be number one, but he'll definitely be one of the better defenders. He's an 80 defensive shortstop, and so just there's not too many guys with that good of a bat that have the elite defense. So I thought he was really cool. So they were kind of quick with him, which I liked. Guys like that are that elite defensively and athletic when they're young, get pushed pretty hard, even if the bat's not quite ready. So that kind of happened to him where he was really young for all his levels. He started out in rookie ball and was already in short season A at the age of 18, which is really cool. Absolutely killed it. Hit 366. Just a freak. Was in the Arizona Fall League at 19 years old after this A-ball season where he had 250 batting average, 2.5 WAR. Got promoted during the same season to high A, 2.4 WAR. So he's almost at 5 WAR, and then he got promoted to Double A in the same season as 19-year-old season, where he had almost 40 games and struggled a little bit offensively, but was still passable with a positive WAR. Still had almost a full WAR in 40 games, which is crazy. So the offense went from 130 to 105 to 69 as he progressed the levels. But then he went to the Fall League, kind of struggled a bit when he was really young. Most guys in the Fall League are like 22, 23. And then he started the next year right in the majors. So it's just a crazy jump. Started pretty much the same season he started in A-ball, and then the next year he started in the majors. So I absolutely love the aggressiveness by Washington. He had 125 games last year. His WRC plus was 50. He was in minus 1.4 WAR. There's elite defensive shortstops in the league made it so he wasn't quite as good last year defensively. I think he had 75 range, and maybe one of these was a 70, and his arm was a 45. And then it progressed in the offseason to 80 range. His arm went up to 50, for my scout at least. And that was enough. And then a little bit of range was taken off some of the elite defensive shortstops in the league. A couple of those 80 shortstops fell to 75, like the Colorado guy. I think Preciado on Milwaukee might have gone to 75 range also, or somebody else. But a few of those guys, maybe the league wasn't quite as good defensively. So the zone range has really improved. It went from a -5 to a positive this season. So just with maybe it was him just improving a little bit of both, but it was enough where it really changes the WAR outlook. So his WRC plus has bounced from a 50 to 100, which is crazy because if you look at the walk rate, 5.7 last year, 5.9 this year, strikeout rate 24.9, 23.5. So literally almost identical walk to strikeout ratios. Pitch per plate appearance just a tad higher with a little better eye. He's just hit way harder on the baseball and made more contact. ISO, the extra base power, went from 0.096 to 0.15. So that's gone up like almost 50% extra on top of what it was, and it just made a ton more contact. He went from hitting 220 to 275. So just a crazy progression. So it made him from a -1.4 WAR player, and now he's on pace for a 3.3 WAR season, which is right up there. I actually went earlier to the stats, which was fun. And I sorted WAR on position players, and then I made a filter of 24 years old and under. So it's really cool to see. He's right up near the top, Chris Marko here, which is kind of why I thought of him. Some other really cool names on this list are all kind of superstars. Another guy I thought really made a big improvement was Barrientos here. He's always been a lot of green, which kind of caught my eye, but I always just kind of played him off as, corner bat. Had pretty good power, but not super elite. And then he just keeps getting better. And now he's to a point where I looked at him and it's like, holy smokes, that bat is getting really special. Like that's that bat, if you look at him, his profile, and then you go to Colorado, almost looks the same as JJ Bledays. And obviously, you can see what kind of offensive stats he's putting up, even though it's in Coors. Still, even without Coors, the last his career has been pretty spectacular, over 4 WAR a bunch of times. So it just kind of shows the kind of talent this guy is. So that's pretty amazing at 23 years old, how good he's gotten already. It's really cool too because he started the whole year last year and had a pretty good season, 3.3 WAR. So just kind of fell under the radar for me, being on Toronto. I guess they were struggling a little bit. Hadn't looked at their roster a ton, and I just noticed how good he was getting. So it's kind of a cool thing to do these lists sometimes to kind of refresh your memory on some certain players. So he's right up there in the top 5 in WAR for players under the age of 25 years old. Tony Ramos here at the top, just a ridiculous talent on Boston. Got a big extension in the offseason. Looks like he's been so dominant this year. He's on pace for crazy 344 batting average, 41 home runs, 20 steals, being the 2020 club. Crazy offense, not even playing defense as a DH to get that kind of WAR is just crazy. So essentially, if he has anywhere close to what he's projected to this year, I'd say he's almost worth almost the duration of that contract. If you put that all together, that'd be like a $30 million guy. He's pretty much been worth that this season on a 1-year, $30 million deal. You'd be happy with that if you're a big budget team and want a big bat in your lineup. So that's just pretty ridiculous how valuable he's been. So that looks like an absolute bargain now, the rest of that deal. The fact that he's 24 years old, he's going to be locked up in his prime right till the age of 30. So that's just a crazy talent there. Manny Guevara here has just lived up to all the hype. Last year, again, a lot like, this is what happens when you play 20-year-olds in the majors, a lot like Marko on Washington, the shortstop. Both guys kind of struggled the rookie year. Guevara was a little better, had quite a bit of power, which made him a positive player with 96 WRC plus still, but nothing like how good he's been this year. This year, he's just skyrocketed. Last year, he's worth minus runs as an offensive player, just barely under 0. That's why he's at 96 WRC plus. This year, he's been worth positive 22. 180 WRC plus, to put in perspective, that's kind of like what Aaron Judge's averages over the last 4 years in real life. I think he got like 150, 145 a couple times, and he had that 220 last year, 210 in real life, where he hit like 62 home runs. So that's the kind of offensive talent this guy is. That's pretty cool. And Manny Leyva, who's just turned into an absolute superstar, rock star here. He hit 318 last year. I think for most of the year he's hitting 340 last year. Kind of got cold late. Same thing this year. He's hitting 340. On pace for almost 40 home runs again. Crazy numbers. A really low strikeout rate for a slugger. An amazing contact tool against both sides. So just turned into a monster. Pat Carlson's also kind of made that leap. 22 years old. 174 WRC plus. The guy is on pace for 50 home runs. Just turned into a slugger. 22-year-old. So it's pretty cool to see these good guys on these rebuilding teams to give them kind of hope. Toronto, Washington, and the White Sox, all kind of teams that aren't at the top of the standings the last year or two. So pretty neat to see how well those young stars are doing on those teams. Mike Williams here, Mitch Drew, a couple of Montreal guys we've talked about a ton, so I'll skip over them. Lemos here, talked about him quite a bit too, turned into an absolute stud. Danny Madera here lived up to his crazy billing as one of the most advanced hitters in the draft that you'll see. And he's lived up to that, where he's just got all the way to his potentials pretty much, minus a couple minus fives here on the eye and contact, and just turned into a monster in the playoffs last year and this year. And then some guys we talked about in the preseason rookie of the year predictions. Ruben Godinez is up there pretty high. Ben Crocker's having a real nice season in Miami, a tough stadium to hit on. He's having a really good year. Robbie Cazares here, almost hitting 300, on pace for 20 home runs. Been a real nice young guy there, first overall pick. Playing well for a really good Texas team this year. That's 500, which is awesome to see. You got young first baseman here hitting really well. Billy Holland is having a fantastic season in Toronto. The ratings aren't quite there, but he has a really nice balanced profile with a good defender, really good base runner, decent contact. Never going to be a slugger, but enough to make him a pretty valuable player, especially this year. So a lot of cool guys on this list. If you go to the pitching leaders and do the, if you go to the pitch, what am I doing here? Sortable stats, and then we're going to go to pitching stats. And then we're going to sort by all pitchers, and then we're going to sort by WAR, and then we're going to sort by, under 24 years old. So the top of the list here, rookie of the year pick for me, was Chris Logan on Nashville, having a monster season. Gabe Baldwin, who's been our top prospect for a couple of years here on all my lists that I've done personally. Absolutely loved him. He's starting to live up to the hype. Josh Lewis, just some monster ratings there. Jaden Mason here turned into a beast. I really regret passing on him in the draft. think he just recently went up to, oh yeah, he's a 45 stuff for a while here. The 50 and 45 keep bouncing around for his potential, but just a monster. Been really good. Never noticed this till now, how good of a season Ochoa's having in Cincy here. That's pretty cool to see. He was part of the Darwinian Hernandez trade a few years ago. Turned into a stud here. A couple rough outings lately here, but it's up to 12 saves already. Really cool to see out of him. And then we got another guy. This guy's still under 25 years old. That's crazy. So pretty awesome. Oh, and I'll end this video actually with one last thing here. We'll talk about my absolute monster prospect. Really excited to call him up. 2 starts, just been absolutely fantastic. He's let up 5 base hits over 11 plus innings. Only walked 2 guys, has 16 strikeouts in 11 innings, 41% strikeout rate, only 5% walk rate. Let up the 1 home run, only 1 earned run in the 2 games, just been phenomenal. So I was kind of cheap with him, holding him down in the minors to, delay that arbitration to a 7th year. Get the Super 2 deadline pass. So, and then I was actually going to call him up a few weeks earlier, but I just kept forgetting, being kind of lazy and forgetting to promote him. So I pretty much waited till the end of May there, and he is still. It's just kind of worth the wait, because right before I did it, he started the year here with a 30 movement, and then it jumped up to 35, and then literally I was going to promote him, and then I think I was actually going to do it 2 sims ago, and then I forgot to hit export again, and then I screwed up, and then the next sim I did it, and then that's when he went up to 40-45. So obviously that probably still would have happened if I would have promoted him earlier, but he stayed in AAA 1 extra sim, and that just happened to be the sim his new scouting report came in and showed him at a 40 movement, which is crazy because I was just so low before. I never thought he'd be decent in the majors when he had like 30 20-25 movement and 25-25. It's just like, even though his stuff and control were ridiculous, he was always just going to be frustrating letting up all the home runs, but the movement's just gone crazy. It's gone from 25 to 40 over like the last like 9 months here, and now it just keeps going up. It might even get to 50 one day, and if it does, I think he'll be a legitimate ace. He might already be, with just how ridiculous that stuff is. Just strikes out everything in sight. So even when he does let up home runs, there's usually not guys on base. He only lets up like minimal base hits, so just not going to let up too many of those like 2-3 run home runs. So even if he has a start with 6 innings, lets up 3 home runs, they're all solo shots. He's probably going to win that game if he goes 6 innings, 3 earned runs. So he's just been absolutely ridiculous, and one of the first guys I can ever remember having 380 current pitches. I've seen a few relievers that have that, like Josh Hader, a couple guys, but I can't ever remember seeing a starter that has 380s, especially having 4 pitches over 70 is pretty ridiculous too. So one of the best pitch mixes I've ever seen in this game, and I'm just getting super excited about him now. I was always kind of excited, but I was trying to be reserved in the back of my mind with expectations with how low the movement is. But it's just pretty cool to see a guy like this just get so much better over the years. Start with 25-40 stuff, turn into like 90 stuff, which is just crazy. So same with the control, just ridiculous improvements over all those years in the minors. So shout out to the minor league pitching coaches, I guess. What a ridiculous talent. So that's it for this episode. I just thought I'd talk about some random stuff today, and I'm going to start working on the trade deadline stuff for everybody, so it'll be a lot of fun. Cheers, guys.